All right, joining us to talk about what's possible with tax reform, Liam Donovan, representing the construction industry. He's Senior Director of Legislative Affairs with Builders and Contractors. And Adam Egger, reporter with the Weekly Standard. We thank both of you for joining us. So walk me through this. How are you going to do a tax cut for the wealthy? And they're going to get a tax cut, but the tax cut is going to basically leave them where they are. That doesn't sound much like a tax cut.
I can't speak to what the president is necessarily talking about there, but I think what the congressional leaders and the Big Six are thinking of is doing a comprehensive bill that lowers rates for both corporations and pass-through entities, so a lower business tax rate, one that probably lowers or helps families and working families by increasing the standard deduction and that sort of thing. So I think the parsing there is that you're going to take care of businesses on both sides of the code while making sure that families in the middle are taken care of as well.
One of the things Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, just said, well, what we're going to have is we're going to have a tax cut for the wealthy. However, they're going to lose a lot of the deductions off the bottom, so that's what's going to leave them pretty much where they were. Let's talk about the construction trades, all right? Because we want people building. We want people into new construction projects. However, why should the construction industry maybe jump to the front of the line or want some kind of special, advance on a tax deal, whereas other groups like the middle class might be saying, hey, what about me?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's so much an issue of this being a specific tax cut for the construction industry. I think it's more an example of just they're a group that just due to the fact that our tax code stands the way it does right now, they stand to benefit a lot from a tax cut that would end up benefiting everybody. They're just positioned to perhaps just be in a strong position following this kind of legislation.
When Eric Cantor was the House Majority Leader, anytime anybody talked about tax cuts, Cantor wanted it paid for. Something was going to go cut, something was going to get cut from the budget. Can we afford a tax cut right now? Obviously everybody wants the revenue that's going to be generated if more people have money in their pockets. But are we there right now? Are we far enough away from the 2008 meltdown that we can afford this?
I think what we can't afford is to miss this opportunity. I think it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity to do some incredible things with the tax code. I think that the congressional leaders appreciate that. The administration appreciates that. And so the key is doing what you can within the 10-year window, but making sure in those out years you have those things that you can make permanent. And that's where revenue comes into play, making sure that those things balance outside a 10-year window.
Let's start the politics of this, obviously, because the politics are all messed up right now, and that's an understatement, I know. But, this week we saw this situation with the president reaching out to these Democrats. A lot of the people in the Republicans were not too happy about that. There's not a lot of things that Democrats and Republicans can agree on these days, but they all like to agree on the fact that they'd like to get reelected. So is this something that they can maybe unify around, the fact that they can go back to their voters in the midterms and say, hey, look, we got you a tax cut? Is that something that they can work from on a common place?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, clearly that's part of the Republican strategy here is to target some of those weaker.
But it would help Democrats too, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that some of these more moderate Democrats who, don't necessarily feel like, because it's also consideration that for some people just going along with President Trump on anything is going to hurt them politically, depending on the district.
Now, when you look at it, though, what's the stopper for the Democrats? Obviously, when they start hearing about, the rich getting a tax cut, that's why the president is saying, no, the rich are going to be level. That's why Steve Mnuchin says that bottom deduction loss is going to level things out. They don't want to talk about, the rich getting any advantage on this. Is that going to trip this up at some point if maybe those deductions still go ahead?
I think there's a tax policy issue where there's philosophical differences between Republicans and Democrats, but there's also the political question of Democrats not wanting to give the president a win. But I do think that Republicans approaching this through the reconciliation process means that they can try to do this with only Republican votes.
All right. We thank you very much for being with us, Liam Donovan and Adam Egger. We're going to talk about this tax cut more, I'm sure. We're not done with this by any means. So we thank you for coming in this morning. We're going to have you back at some point.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.